The fact is, Donald Trump has ruined the foundations of our criminal justice system in this country. And I actually blame Merrick Garland. This is a stretch for most people tonight. But Merrick Garland should have done his job and should have followed through on the many charges that Donald Trump faced, and we would not be in this situation today. The fact is, Donald Trump right now is perverting the justice system, using it to go after his political opponents, and we've never seen anything like this before. We've never seen someone who is not qualified as Pam Bondi actually go after their political opponents.
In today's video, Bakari Sellers unleashes on Brad Todd and Trump on CNN's AC 360. Things get heated fast as Bakari Sellers goes head-to-head with Brad Todd over Trump's stunning demand that the Justice Department go after his political enemies. What starts as a legal debate quickly turns into a warning about how dangerous it is when a president openly treats law enforcement like a personal weapon. This is one of those moments where the stakes aren't partisan. They're about whether the rule of law still means anything at all. So let's dive in and watch how Bakari Sellers shuts down Brad Todd on CNN's AC 360.
Joining us now from the left and the right, CNN political commentators Bakari Sellers and Brad Todd, also best-selling author and Supreme Court biographer Jeffrey Toobin. Jeffrey, I mean, is it possible to overstate the significance of the President of the United States telling Pam Bondi to go after perceived enemies?
It's never happened before in American history. Nothing like that. When you look at Richard Nixon's enemies list, which is maybe the closest parallel, he didn't make it public. It came out much later in investigations because he knew how wrong it was. Nixon knew that it was wrong to target enemies and to use the power of the government to attack people simply because they're your enemies. This is that kind of misconduct in public from the president. As a former prosecutor, who has a lot of respect for how the Justice Department works, the idea that a president is directing the indictment and firing people, he fired the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia because he wouldn't go after Tish James. This is a real perversion of how the Justice Department is supposed to work, and we'll see if he gets what he wants and these people are actually charged.
Brad, do you see this as a perversion of how the Justice Department is supposed to work?
Well, Anderson, we're not giving the rest of the context here. Later on, and when he was interviewed, the next interview after this, President Trump said, maybe they're not guilty of anything. If they're not guilty of anything, we need to be able to say that and move on.
Well,
maybe
actually, let me play.
So
let me play what he said on Saturday.
We have to act fast, one way or the other. One way or the other. They're guilty, they're not guilty, we have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they are guilty or if they should be charged, they should be charged. And we have to do it now.
So is that what he said, though, to the Attorney General?
Well, that's what presumably she watches the news and heard his soundbite there. And, she in the end doesn't bring charges. She would have to present evidence to a grand jury. The grand jury, a jury of citizens, would have to bring charges against someone. So that's how this system works. It's how it has worked. And that's how this would follow through if the Justice Department ever decided there was anything of merit against one of those individuals.
After Watergate, the DOJ didn't just change vibes, it changed rules. Presidents were expected to keep their distance from individual prosecutions because even the appearance of political pressure can taint the system. That's why every modern Attorney General memo from both parties stresses independence from the White House on charging decisions. And history backs this up. When presidents have tried to lean on prosecutors even quietly, it's blown up. Reagan's DOJ faced backlash over Iran-Contra interference. George W. Bush's administration was rocked by the U.S. attorney firing scandal in 2006, where prosecutors were removed for not being politically helpful enough. That episode alone led to congressional investigations and resignations at DOJ. What's happening happening now is more brazen than that, because it's not happening behind closed doors. It's being said out loud. The grand jury will decide argument also glosses over how much power prosecutors actually wield. Legal scholars have long noted that a grand jury largely follows the prosecutor's lead. Justice Scalia once joked that a prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich. So when the president is publicly naming targets, demanding speed, and rewarding loyalty, it creates an incentive structure that bends the process long before a jury ever sees a case. There's also a real-world cost here beyond norms. Public trust in the justice system is already fragile. Gallup polls show confidence in federal institutions, including DOJ, has been declining for years. Turning prosecutions into what looks like score settling accelerates that erosion, and once people believe the law is applied based on loyalty rather than evidence, compliance drops across the board. That's how you end up with weaker institutions, not stronger ones. And globally, this isn't theoretical. Democracies that slide toward authoritarianism almost always start by politicizing prosecutors while insisting it's still legal. Hungary and Turkey followed that exact path. Judges stayed in place, grand juries existed, procedures were followed, but the targets were predictable and politically convenient.
Bakari, if this is all well and good, why do you think it was taken down, the post?
First of all, this is not all well and good. And what we're seeing is, I mean, to my good friend Brad's point, what he's saying is that these individuals are guilty until proven innocent. That's just not the way the American justice system works. I think Jeffrey Toobin knows this extremely well from being on the opposite side of where I sit, being a prosecutor. The fact is, Donald Trump has ruined the foundations of our criminal justice system in this country. And I actually blame Merrick Garland. This is a stretch for most people tonight, but Merrick Garland should have done his job and should have followed through on the many charges that Donald Trump faced, and we would not be in this situation today. The fact is, Donald Trump right now is perverting the justice system, using it to go after his political opponents, and we've never seen anything like this before. We've never seen someone who is not qualified as Pam Bondi actually go after their political opponents. And ethics, when the Trump administration came into office the second time, were completely thrown out the window. And we see this by Tom Homan, who literally is taking bags of cash, although I like Kava, he's taking bags of cash to have someone get government contracts. This is the very, very fundamental element of the Trump administration, which is that ethics have no place in government. And I think people, the American public, are turning their stomach against that.
Brad, I want you to be able to respond.
Well, Bakari, I wish I was as eloquent as my friend Bakari is, but to say that there's never been a president that weaponized the Department of Justice's prosecutions against their political opponent means that Bakari has forgotten what happened in the last couple of years. You had Merrick Garland and the Biden administration sending their career prosecutors on a novel prosecution, something that had never been seen before in New York, a cooked-up charge. That's exactly what happened. The Biden administration willfully helped prosecute their political opponent, and that's not so long ago.
What really undercuts Brad's argument here is that the history and structure of the Justice Department just don't back up the idea that everyone does this, so it's fine. After Watergate, Congress passed a whole slate of reforms precisely because Nixon tried to do what we're now watching out in the open. That's where the modern norms of DOJ independence came from, and why presidents since then, Republican and Democrat, have been drilled on keeping arm's length from specific prosecutions. Even Reagan and Bush took political hits when it appeared they crossed that line, let alone bragged about it publicly. And when people point to recent prosecutions as proof of weaponization, they leave out a key distinction. Those cases were initiated by career prosecutors, reviewed by grand juries, and often overseen by judges appointed by both parties. In fact, multiple Trump-appointed judges allowed those cases to proceed because the evidentiary standards were met. That's a far cry from a president naming enemies on camera and demanding action on a deadline. There's also the ethics side that doesn't get enough attention. Federal law doesn't just prohibit bribery, it criminalizes the appearance of quid pro quo when officials leverage public office for private benefit. The Office of Government Ethics has warned for decades that cash for access arrangements, even indirect ones, erode public trust and invite corruption. Transparency International consistently ranks countries lower when leaders blur that line, and trust in institutions drops fast. The US isn't immune to that pattern. What's more, data shows voters actually care about this more than pundits admit. Pew and Gallup polls over the last year show majorities across party lines agree that the justice system should be insulated from political pressure. Independents, in particular, see targeting political opponents as a red flag for democratic backsliding, not accountability.
So, speaking of unprecedented, we had a president try to overturn the results of an election. That was unprecedented, and that led to criminal charges. The same president had classified information in his house in Florida that he had been asked and repeatedly to return. That wasn't the behavior was unprecedented, not the prosecution.
Let me just ask about Tom Homan. Jeff, just from a legal standpoint, is it actually illegal if you are not in a position to give somebody a sweetheart deal or a contract to take money?
It's the answer is no. It is not illegal to do it if you have no ability to deliver
deliver immediately, even if you're going to be in office.
Well, but that's where it gets a little subtle, and that's why it seems like you should have more of an investigation. If you're about to be named to a position that you know and he the bribe giver knows you are going to get, then it might be illegal. It certainly seems to call for more investigation. And certainly the circumstances passing a bag of cash add to the suspiciousness around it, if that's actually what happened.
In general, if somebody offers you a bag of cash, would you take it? Generally, good rule not to do it.
As a journalist, no, I would. I try to avoid.
Yeah.
Was it in a
if it were like a
bag,
different
store. If it's in a Kava bag, maybe.
All right. That's all the time we have, guys. Thank you, Bakari, Brett Todd as well, Jeff Toobin.
When people say this was all political, they tend to skip the triggering events that forced prosecutors' hands. Courts have repeatedly held that investigations into a former president are lawful when they're based on concrete acts, like attempting to obstruct the certification of an election or refusing lawful subpoenas for classified materials. In fact, in United States v. Nixon, the Supreme Court made clear that even a sitting president doesn't get to ignore legal process, and that precedent has guided DOJ behavior ever since. On the bribery and ethics side, the law is narrower than people assume, but that doesn't mean the conduct is benign. Federal statutes like honest services, fraud, and conspiracy don't require a completed quid pro quo. They hinge on intent, expectation, and context. That's why prosecutors often focus on timing, future authority, and patterns of access. The DOJ's own public integrity section has warned that anticipatory bribery, payments made in expectation of future power, is one of the hardest but most important forms of corruption to investigate, precisely because it often happens before someone formally holds office. There's also a reason inspectors general and ethics watchdogs exist outside the criminal system. Something can fall short of an indictable offense and still represent a serious breach of public trust. Historically, that's why administrations from both parties have leaned on recusals, divestment, and strict disclosure rules, not because everyone is guilty, but because the appearance of impropriety alone can poison confidence in government. and public confidence matters more than politicians like to admit. According to the World Justice Project, countries where leaders blur personal enrichment and state power see rapid declines in rule of law scores, even when prosecutions don't immediately follow. The damage isn't just legal, it's institutional. So Jeffrey's point lands because this isn't about stretching the law to punish enemies. It's about recognizing that when behavior repeatedly tests the outer edges of legality, the responsible move isn't dismissal or whataboutism, it's scrutiny. That's not politicization. That's the system doing what it was designed to do. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.